Hey, welcome to the Strategic Success Podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Fricky. Thanks for tuning in. All right, you guys, welcome to another episode of the Strategic Success Podcast. I'm very excited about today's episode. So, you've become more of a new friend. We've been Facebook friends for a while, but the last few times we've gotten to hang out in person. So, Reggie Lal, I am so glad that while I was here in Atlanta that we were able to connect and have this episode. So, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Courtney. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always a privilege to talk to people, to share what we know. And yeah, I've followed you a little bit. We've met recently, and I love what you're doing.
Likewise, yeah.
It's, a lot of us are getting older, and it's really neat to see the next generation, the torches kind of being handed off. And it's really cool.
And
You've had some great people on, by the way.
oh, well, thank you. And I love that because it's of the passing of the torch. I am a big fan of the folks who are doing the passing. And there's so many folks that I look to learn from that they're just further down the road and they can to speak to things. And so I think today we're going to dive into some fun stuff.
Absolutely.
So for folks who are new to your
Uh-huh.
story, can you give us like a 30,000-foot view
Sure.
of, your background and your journey for wealth building?
Yeah, absolutely. The part about getting to know someone is always in a podcast kind of interesting. Some people go forever about it, and then the content's here, and other people just kind of skip over it. But a quick, I'm your typical immigrant story.
Okay.
Came from a third world country from very poor circumstance. Came to America when I was about 12.
Which country?
I was born in Fiji, which for some
Mhm.
people may kind of Hawaii and keep going a little bit more.
Right.
British ruled country, slavery, late 1800s. They brought slaves in from India
Yeah.
to Fiji to work the sugarcane and pineapples. And my grandparents were on the boat. My parents grew up as most slaves do, second generation poor. My dad figured, okay, I got to
Yeah.
get a better opportunity. Came to the U.S. legally, figured it out somehow, and we came when I was about 12 and grew up here.
Yeah.
He had a career in the U.S. military. He did 21 years.
Wow.
And so I'm a military kid. I went to Army bases throughout.
Okay.
The last tour was in California. Typical of immigrants, work hard, get through college, get a great job. If you're not a doctor or lawyer, then do the best you can.
Yeah.
That's kind of their mindset. And that
Sure.
was the same. And, I did all that, did my pre-med, decided, really don't like this. I don't like sick people and I don't like blood. So it's probably not a good career choice.
Yeah.
So I finished my bachelor's and said, all right, I'll just get a job. I did it for 14 years. I was in Central California, the Bay
Okay.
Area, East Bay, for those of you that know. And at year 14, man, for some strange reason, I picked up a copy of Rich Dad.
So like just out of the blue, see it on the shelf, or someone recommended it,
That's a
or
really good question. So my job, I worked for the city of Oakland, California, worked in the public utility department,
okay.
and they went 24/7 like a lot of providers.
Yeah.
So in the off hours, it was more monitoring, less doing,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't want you out running around in the dark. And so we had a lot of reading time.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I forgot to bring something. I was working second shift. I forgot to bring something to read, which I'm like, how could I have done this? So in our cubbies, the guy next to me, John Young, man, thanks. He had a book in there, and I'm like, "What is this? What's John reading?" He's usually reading Kiplinger or finance or something.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm like,
So
"What
we
is
know
he
the
reading?"
type.
Yeah, I'm like, we share stuff, and he's reading this purple cover. I'm like, "What the heck? Did he go off the deep end?" And I'm all right. Well, John's pretty solid, so I pull it out, start reading it on third shift. I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
I took it home with me. I left him a sticky. He goes, "John, I'll bring it back tomorrow." I went home. I got off at 11. Got home about 12. I kept reading.
Yeah.
And I had to be back the next morning for first shift. It was crazy, but that just changed my paradigm.
So Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is a you know, it's a it was a fork in the road for many people.
Right.
So, okay, so you're working for the city, for the utility company. 14 years in, you read this book almost by
Right.
chance, we would say Providence. And then
Right.
what
Right.
what happened next in your journey?
It's just Providence. I'm big on, self-improvement and
Yeah.
implementing. And so I
Because you were
started,
reading when you didn't have to be. Yeah.
right. I mean, I already had investments going and savings and, a rental house. So it was kind of already knew real estate was a good thing
Yeah.
but not scaling it.
Yeah.
And so it just so happened again by Providence that I was looking to buy a house in my hometown, um, and a guy at church was a mortgage broker. So I said, "Well, you're great. Let's do a mortgage to get the house."
Yeah.
And we got to be friends. Lee, thanks again. Next guy. Um, and he said, "I do this other thing over here. I flip houses. And if you ever want, you can come out there and see what I do and have
Yeah.
lunch with me." And I was intrigued. Who would say no to that?
Right.
And so I did. And he had a couple of crews. He was buying beater houses, and fixing them up. And he did quite well. And he goes, "Oh, man, if you want to get started, I'll help you."
Yeah.
And he introduced me to his REO. This was in like 2000. So a few market cycle kind of people. We were still coming off of some,
.com boom.
we had some REOs still.
Okay.
Trustee sales were very active and vivid. By
Yeah.
the way, if you follow, the trends, it'll help you. If you
Yes.
know where you are in
Yeah.
the market, take what it gives you.
Right.
And so I met his REO broker. He helped me find a crew and we started flipping houses.
Yeah.
We were buying junk, fixing it, selling it to first time FHA buyers, doing quite well on it.
Okay.
And that started my flipping career
And so you're doing that on the side while
on the
still
side.
with the utility company. At what point did you leave?
So, I always say be strategic in all you do.
Yeah.
At that point, my career had moved up just a hair and I had a regular job there. I demoted back down so that I could work a 3-day work week.
Yeah.
People are like, "Man, you bump your head? You're getting demoted? You're
Right.
a good worker. What's
Don't
going on?"
don't you need to climb the ladder at work?
Right. And I'm like, this way, I only work 3 days here and I get 4 days. So that started my paralleling of flipping houses.
Yeah. Okay.
And within a year, I was making just 3 houses flipped, earned what I would make. And I had a pretty good paying job even back then.
Yeah.
So I started transitioning. I started getting myself
Okay.
ready to say, you know what, this is done, new phase.
So you did a good bit of flipping houses. What
Mhm.
did you do after that?
Flipping is kind of a, natural gateway to many things in real estate. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a butcher picking a select cut to take home to his family. You can obviously keep some,
Yeah.
you can wholesale some,
Yeah.
you can wrap lend on some. There's all kinds of cool things. And so I just kind of became more of a, two-way player, if you're a baseball fan. Started doing a little bit of everything.
Okay.
And then accidentally, I kind of became a lender. I had got really good at lead gen back then.
Okay. So finding these
I
deals.
was fighting more deals, and it just so happened one particular period, I had way more than I could take on. My contractor says, "Boss, you see how I work? I would love to buy this house from you. I just don't have any money."
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, well, and he goes, "I'll fix it up." So I financed it for him,
Okay.
and he did a great job. And that went well, and it introduced me to hard money lending, me
Yeah.
being the lender. And then he's like, "Well, boss, I do this really well. I made some money. Can we do this again?" He always called me boss. I mean, he's an equal, he's a team member,
Sure.
but that's just his term.
Sure.
And so we started doing that. And sometimes I would wrap and take someone else's money. And so all these concepts that people always said, "Oh, I'm wrap lending or I'm doing this or that,
Yeah.
wholesaling." This was in the year 2000, folks. So
There wasn't a YouTube video on it, but it
yeah,
was,
get over yourselves,
yeah.
man. This has been going on since, Moses rating tablets about,
y-
who's on deed.
Yes.
So get over it.
Yes.
It's just, we just package it differently.
Yeah, exactly. There's always like that new YouTube, terminology. But
Yep.
so, all right. So then you start doing these other strategies.
Hmm.
At what point did you start getting into, what most folks would consider the business world? Obviously, you were running businesses in real estate,
Right.
but the outside business world.
Real estate was a great career. And just to keep going from 2000, by '03, I was flipping, 40, 50 houses a year, making
Mhm.
7 figures. In
Mhm.
California, it's not, I mean,
Yeah,
it's not me, it's the market.
sure.
Obviously, I put some work in it, but so then, went great. And 2007 happened, reset.
Okay.
And like most people, I was leading wrong.
Mhm.
So in '08,
What was that last statement? You were
leaning wrong.
leaning wrong. What were you leaning towards? Like,
Unfortunately,
break that
yeah,
down a little bit.
yeah, and people did the same things. Leave some chips off the table.
Hmm.
That's not at the top of the market. Isn't probably the time to go hard.
Yeah.
Um, or be more focused on how much debt you're carrying. Leverage cuts both ways.
Yeah.
Um,
So being mindful of the market you're in, of when you put your foot on the gas
right,
versus foot on the
right,
pedal. Yeah, and that assessing what you're doing and not just being, go go go, but like assessing
right.
your risk, right?
Exactly.
I
In
think that's
fact,
smart.
2 things I always tell people, in our business, park and neutral are okay gears. It doesn't always have
Mm,
to be in hyperdrive.
mm,
And when people say, "What business are you in?" Doesn't matter. I wholesale. I do STRs. I do ADUs. Really, you're in the risk assessment business. Let's
yeah,
just be honest. That's what we all do.
yeah,
We have some resources. We manage them. We assess the
right.
risk to grow them.
Right. We want returns, but to get especially higher returns, you've got to manage that risk.
Exactly.
Um, I love that. I love that mindset because so many people they're not thinking that way. They're just only thinking about the returns, making the money.
When you chase returns, it's kind of a unfillable goal because there's always a higher high. It's kind of like people that use drugs. I've never have, but they always tell me they're chasing the next high. And
Yeah.
returns are kind of like that financially speaking. You're looking for the next, well, that was good, but I want more, and then you OD one day.
So Peter Fortunato, who we both
Love
know and
Peter.
learn from, he said that there's something called yield sickness, and yield sickness is that idea of what you're talking about. They're
Yeah,
they're chasing the high of that
right,
those
right.
high returns, but with high returns come higher risk. And so how do you protect and guard yourself from that?
'07, I think '08 reset a lot of our mindsets. I watched a lot of really good investors, some that mentored me that I thought were unfailable,
Yeah.
infallible, I guess would be the word. And they took good assets, man. They had some great rentals and they leveraged them to buy more.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, they got into negative cash flows. They got upside down equity wise,
Yeah.
and they lost everything.
Hmm.
These are people that I thought were wow.
Yeah.
These are like
These people are probably leading the pack.
there were. And
Yeah.
so, I actually made a list. I called it my heartburn list of all the things that I will never do again in
Yeah.
'08. And it took me a lot of years to unwind that mess. And I never short sold. I never foreclosed. I never bankrupted. Everybody got paid.
Mm.
Institutional debt got paid even. All
Yeah.
my private investors got paid. It just took a while. It's going
Yeah.
to take a while to unwind a big mess.
Yeah.
And so what I learned from it is some key points is, when you have really good assets, your repositioning, it doesn't always have to include more leverage.
Yeah.
And take some chips off the table and worry about, you have three things that focus, I guess would be a better word, is we have, cash flow, we have debt flow, and we have tax flow. And, that's not me, that's Chris that teaches taxes, um, says that. And so a lot of people have one thing coming in. I got a ton of income. I'm flipping houses, man. I'm making seven figures. I'm good. But how much leverage are you using?
Yeah.
How safe is it?
Yeah.
Can you modify it?
Yeah.
You know? And then that's not really efficient if you're paying taxes on all of it.
Yeah.
So these are the things you got to kind of think about. And then when you're chasing yield, percentages don't really mean anything. You can call it a 4% yield. If I'm making $1 million a year in my pajamas and it's renewable and it's safe, you can
Yeah.
call it whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's really not about yield. It is about financial independence.
I actually really like that because so many people they're like they're focused on what that spreadsheet says,
Okay.
and that spreadsheet, it's how does that spreadsheet reflect in real life?
It doesn't. It's funny because I learned the lesson. One of my favorite investors and peer and mentor and friend, Mike Cantu,
Mhm.
we made fun of him with no mercy on these Jack Miller cruises where Mike, he believes in long-term hold of really good assets. He's always
Mhm.
upgrading.
Yeah.
And his yield is much lower. It's kind of like John Shaw, but with the nice portfolio of good houses, his
Yeah.
yield's lower. And everybody always had another idea for Mike.
You can always make more money.
Yeah, you should be doing this instead. You should be doing.
Yeah.
When they finally very kindly said, "Look, you can call it whatever you want, man. I make, and I'm not gonna say the number X amount every month, and I don't work very hard, so you can call it 2% if you want. I don't really care.
Yeah.
This much comes in. I live very well on this much every month. This much grows. Call it what you want."
Yeah. And I'm not out there, busting my bottom for 40 hours a
Exactly.
week.
Exactly.
And so I think that's key. So at a certain point, I'm loving what you're sharing here because these are those hard-earned lessons.
Yeah.
Because I call it keeping up with the real estate Joneses. So many people get stuck in that track of like, oh, I've got to be doing more. I need to be, if
Mhm.
I'm not earning this much, I'm in the wrong thing. If
Yep.
I'm not doing what they're doing, something's wrong with me.
Right.
But having to define it for ourselves, right? And
Mhm.
so now So you were flipping the houses, '07 happens, you get that heartburn list, you called it, of the
Yeah,
lessons, the things
what's
I'll
not
never
to
do
do.
again?
Yeah,
Yeah,
don't put more than 20% in one pile of one asset, watch your leverage, all those lessons, there's a whole list of stuff.
yeah,
Pay attention to the market a little bit more. It's not going to ride forever.
yeah,
When you get near the top, start repositioning.
yeah,
Like we are right now. Actually, this is a really good in '06 to right now. We're sitting here in the late spring, early summer of 2025.
yeah,
And there's a lot of parallels. It's manifesting very differently, but this is looking a lot and feeling a lot like '06. We got markets correcting. You look at Austin or Miami, we got some issues going in Florida with insurance and people leaving the state. Um, Austin went up really fast.
yeah.
Now San Diego, which was, the golden child, is now starting to get listings are up.
And
Phoenix is having a pretty good meltdown, starting. This is just brewing.
right, I mean, last night we were at a meetup that I was sharing at,
You did a great job, by the way.
thank you, and
Sub 2 gal right here.
well, thank you. Well, so shout out to Eric Vogel with the Dealmaker Atlanta. We're actually in
Absolutely.
his house in his
Yeah,
studio here.
very kind.
And but I mean, multiple experienced people in the room were talking about how they were selling and pruning their portfolio.
Absolutely. And
That should have been an indicator for the people in the room. They should have said,
right.
"Wait, why are the experienced people doing that right now?"
Like, case in point, love Eric and Tiffany, love what they're doing, super investors. Read their book. I think they give it away free as a PDF
Mhm.
on purpose, investor. It's their story.
Yeah, I
And
love it.
and then they're great. And so this is our season, people like me and some of the other people that you've
Sure.
interviewed to give back.
Yeah.
I've had some great mentors. I'm not going to list them because I'll leave a bunch out and it won't be
Sure.
professional or cool, but they've been great.
Yeah.
So this is our season. I don't do a lot of podcasts and stuff.
Yeah. So I'm so glad to have you here.
It's just not what I do anymore, but
Yeah.
it's our time to give back. And that's why I do this is to, if I can
Yeah.
inspire one person, motivate one person, keep a bunch of people out of harm's way. So Eric and Tiffany reached out. I had recently moved to Atlanta,
Yeah.
my family and I, and they said, "Hey man, can we have, breakfast or coffee?" Sure. So we spent 3 hours having breakfast and all of a sudden they're repositioning what they're doing
Yeah.
based on that conversation and several others. I'm not going to take
Sure.
credit for it, but they've gone really far and done very well. Now it's time to kind of fine tune.
Yeah.
If you're a boater, when you get up the plane, you start trimming the tabs so you gain a little bit more, speed and
Yeah.
efficiency. So they're trimming the tabs.
And that's being mindful of what's going on around you. And
Hmm.
so let's go back to your story where you were '07, you bill out your heartburn list of, okay, I'm not gonna do that stuff again.
Right? That hurt.
Do you go back to real estate during that time? I know at some point you got into businesses. When did that
So,
happen?
one of the things I always try to suggest to people is keep your main thing your main thing.
Yeah.
You can't serve two masters if you want
Yeah.
to look at it from a biblical perspective. And I've always kept real estate as my main thing.
Yeah.
So in '08, what I do? I went back to what got me there, you know. We don't change quarterbacks in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You don't change racehorses, for the Triple Crown, but I started flipping REOs in Sacramento, California.
Okay.
In '08, if you magically could open up a copy of the Sacramento Bee, you would see this guy's buying houses for less than Honda Accords. What's going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was me. And I try to be low profile, use land trust and all that, but he just called the biggest REO broker in town and said, "Man, who's your biggest clients?" And I want to interview them. And of course, they spilled.
Yeah.
But the point of this is the market had given us an aberration, and this is a key point. Look for aberrations. Give, whatever it's giving you, take in.
How would you define an aberration if someone hadn't doesn't understand what that means?
So an aberration is an unusual set of circumstances. If you're a surfer and you want to go to Mavericks, there's a particular point in time when the waves are just perfect and they're
Right.
huge, and you're going to all pile in from New Zealand and Australia to go to Santa Cruz or wherever you're going, South Africa, wherever, because the conditions are perfect.
Yeah.
If you're a fly fisherman, the hatch is going right now.
Yeah.
You got a window.
Yeah.
And so in real estate, let's just go over some of them. So in like the late 1990s, we had a lot of foreclosure activity. So trustee sale buying was a good way to go.
Mhm.
There was an aberration. There was a lot of foreclosures and they were being discounted. In the 2000s, we had a lot of market increase like never before.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of silly loans, liar loans, whatever.
Yeah.
Those are aberrations. Notice they got shut down.
Yeah.
In 2008, we had a lot of REOs. I think I did 52 REOs with my partner Lawrence and some other friends, Carrie. and a team. We put a team together and we dominated the Sacramento market for REOs.
Mhm.
I raised some private capital and we just dominated that market. But I also knew that was going to slow down.
Eventually,
And
there'd be an end to it.
there's
Yeah.
no way Sacramento can have 1,000 active REO listings
Yeah.
as a healthy market.
Right.
It's going to come back.
It's cyclical.
Reversion to the mean if you're one of those stat guys,
Yeah.
gals. And so after that, we went into the short sale era.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was an aberration because they shut that down.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of people that engineered short sales, some unfortunately not legit, legal, and they kind of got,
Yeah.
hunted down. But if you did it right, it was a great market.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we get into this era of stable with appreciation and stupid, silly interest rates.
Super low. Yeah.
Load up, man. If they're going to give you money at 2.5%, 3% for 30 years, you don't have to be Eddie Speed with the calculator to figure out a dollar 20 years from now is probably not worth a dollar,
Yeah.
maybe 20 cents,
Right.
you know? And so when you get that, you know that window's going to shut down. The waves are going to die down and it's going to be normal again. The hatch is over.
Yeah.
It's warm water. You can't fish up in the mountains anymore. It's too hot. So you got to
Yeah.
go do something else.
So when you're seeing these opportunities, first of all, do people see them in the moment or do people
I
miss
would
them?
hope so, especially now with the advent, like what you're doing, the content you're putting out.
So like all the stuff on the internet, all the, the
You would hope.
content, all that?
You would hope. Like a lot of people are like, well, I'm not going to study the market like you do, Reg. I'm just going to call you.
Yeah.
Or better yet, will you just tell me when it's time to buy again and what to
Yeah.
buy? I'm like, I read a lot and I follow the markets more for hobby at this point. But take what it gives you.
Mhm.
Don't paddle upstream, man. It's too hard.
And what are things you're looking at? Like, because for folks who are, for example, let's just say this is someone's first changing market.
hmm hmm
What should they be looking
Really,
for?
really good question. So
Because the writing's not going to be necessarily
it's
on the wall.
not, but when you see a lot of rain clouds coming off the coast, might not be the day to go boating, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And I'm seeing them. And I just named you some markets, and
yeah.
it was really last week, San Diego. All of a sudden, the listings are piling up.
Hmm.
Days on market are going to increase. We're no
Right.
more 5 days on market.
Yeah.
Multiple offers are going to slow down. It's the usual array of things. People are going to discount. We've had no
Right.
reason to discount up until recently.
Right.
So the top of a market is the most dangerous time to invest, according to John Schaub and many of my mentors.
Sure.
We're at the top.
Hmm.
And a lot of people are taking the top end risk at the top of a market.
Yeah.
Now, filter that through for a minute. If you're holding the bag the first, 20, 30%, that's what gets chopped off.
Yeah.
And hard money lenders that haven't corrected yet, um, most hard money lenders went broke in '08.
What advice would you give to lenders if this is their first changing market, whether it's hard money, private money, however they're lending? What advice as an experienced lender yourself, if they're going into their first changing market, how do they protect themselves?
You know, be mindful. First of all, just realize the more leverage that is used, the more risk in that deal.
Hmm.
People that wrap money, take soft money at 6.8 and wrap it at 14 and 4, that's great for you, but it's introducing risk to the deal.
Hmm.
That deal might work at 8%. At
Hmm.
14 and 4, it's not going to work as well.
Hmm.
And eventually, if they can't pay, they might have been able to work through it at 8%. And I'm not knocking wrapping. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying if someone's wrapping my money, I'm going to be more mindful,
Yeah.
especially if they don't have a first loss provision. Like, if you don't know what that is, check out Rich Lennon. He does
Hmm.
a really good job of his lending. He always takes the first loss position. He's on Facebook and he's got a great podcast,
Hmm.
as do others. So look at what your criteria is. What will you lend on? More importantly, what will you not lend on?
Yeah.
And the things you should probably really reconsider is something that has a very long timeline. You're
Yeah.
buying a couple hundred acres, you're in a not so friendly state,
Hmm.
New York, New Jersey, California, Washington, whatever, and you want to build a subdivision.
Yeah.
And you're using 14 and 4 money.
Yeah.
I can already tell you what's going to happen most likely.
Yeah.
That is not what I want to lend on.
Because that's a long project.
Very long project.
Markets can change during that
Is
time,
changing.
and then you have difficult payments to make.
Mhm.
because of that higher
And
interest.
even if you hold the payments and pay later,
Yeah,
at the end, you're dwindling down what you think is, potential profit. So
yeah,
be careful of that. Hard fixers. If you're going to be in that, I think you spoke a little bit about a fixer that was really hard, so you
mhm,
wholesaled it out. That was really smart. Something that's going to take 150 grand to fix up may not be where you want to be with
yeah.
your capital.
Mhm.
Uh, the jockey matters now more than ever, more than the horse even possibly.
So meaning the operator right now, someone, I read something on Twitter or X where it was for so long we've had all the keyboard and spreadsheet
Hmm.
warriors.
Hmm.
And those are the guys who are getting really hurt right now, who are really they can make something look really good on paper or
Right.
maybe even really good on content. But who are the guys who can pull up their,
Mhm.
boots and go make it happen in the streets at the projects,
Right.
and those are really the wartime
Mhm.
generals, right?
That and so things to avoid, know your lending criteria,
Yeah.
avoid the things that don't work. Markets that were very volatile that went up very quickly, hyperinflated. Austin, Texas area
Yeah.
is a good example. Miami condos, another good example. We got a whole bunch of them. I'm just naming you some that are easy.
Yeah.
Phoenix. Um, so if you're at the top, loading in something that went down is starting to stabilize and correct. You may want to adjust your LTV
Yeah.
or
So
the
maybe
type
not
of product.
so getting into safer deals
Safer deals and
if
product type now matters more than ever.
yeah.
Like to finance a condo in Florida right now as a hard money lender, you got to have some real backbone, man.
Hey guys, Courtney Fricky here. We've got Aussie Steve. And look, if you have a deal that needs to get moved, Southeast Louisiana, even in South Mississippi, we're your folks. We are the largest dispo company, really in the greater New Orleans area, even Southeast Louisiana. We have great contacts in South Mississippi as well. Steve, why do we move more deals than others?
Just we're very deep in this market. So Greater New Orleans can be really confusing for national wholesalers. The comps are hard. We change block for block. We got flood zones. We get a lot of hurricanes and the likes, and just a lot of the national platforms don't have the buyers on their
Yeah.
list. So we are deep with buyers, but we're deep with relationships, which is really important in this market. So we love JVing with out-of-state investors.
Like I said, we do a ton of business with other investors. So go to homebuyerlouisiana.com/Courtney, fill out the information. We'll get in touch with you and we'll move this deal along. And
I mean,
and what would be your loan to value on that, right? I
yeah,
feel
if
like,
at all. And
right?
sometimes, war
If at
zone
all, yeah,
properties, uh, all these people that, well, I'm just going to value add to it. I
yeah,
get probably two or three fund requests, people doing funds. Well, yeah, I'm buying it at this price. I know it's not that great, but I'm going to value add to it.
yeah,
Well, do you see where the economy is? People don't have enough money for McDonald's or Starbucks, and you're going to increase rent. If that's your pro forma value add, I'm going to question it harder now than I did
yes.
4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Right, where we saw what 5% rent increases, which is that's not normal, but we saw it. But then
Right.
people are now saying, "Oh, well, that's the amnesia of that
Right.
that we forgot that that's
Even in
yeah,
this market, going to the meetups, the last couple of meetups, people are like, yeah, I'm vacant a lot longer. I've had to reduce rents
yeah,
on good rentals. So pay attention to the product type. Pay attention to, the area. This is not the time to go into hard areas. Um, war zone, avoid it. If you get it back, it's going to be a root canal, man.
yeah,
Don't do it. Stick to John Schaub houses. If you get one back, you probably get a 6, 7 cap out of it and hang on and ride it out.
yeah,
So those are the things. Loan size matters.
mm,
I was mortified. I'm on a couple of mastermind. We were on a Zoom call, and this was January. Here, some real seasoned investors. We're talking heavyweights. Somehow, got invited, which is great. And everyone went around and talked about what are you going to do right now? What are you working on? This is January. Let's get acquainted.
mhm,
I was mortified. Somebody's doing some $40 million thing in Belize.
yeah,
Somebody else is in Costa Rica. Someone else is trying to ramp up to like $100 million, all using leverage.
yeah,
And I'm just sitting there, and then when it comes my turn, well, I do some safe little affordable housing deals, and I do some Midwest investing where I fund people that are doing, Warren Buffett type housing. He still lives in his house in Omaha.
yeah.
And I'm cool with that. But some of these people, it's like, and you want to raise money for that now?
And what was that? Is it because you're like, "Wait, you're, like, pushing all the chips in this part of the market?" Like, is that how you felt about it? Like
Well, you're pulling all it's kind of like if you're running, you're, you're a sprinter, you're in the Olympics and you do the 100 meters.
Mhm.
All of a sudden they go, all right, well, we want you to do the 440. But all your life you've done the 100 meters.
Yeah.
That race is very different, man, running the
Yeah.
440.
Yeah.
The 100 meters, knows exactly. Go as hard as you can from the
Right.
gate and just don't stop. The
Yeah.
440 person knows when you get to the last curve is when you need your gusto, and that's when you put it in overdrive. It's
So
a very different race, and these people are running like they're 100 meters
yeah.
instead of 440, if that makes sports analogies help us visualize. We're a very
For
sports-oriented
sure. And
culture.
so it's someone who's taking on a new strategy or a new project, but then they're going all in on it in this type of market?
That and they're going for like I try to stay away. I love that book, Making It Big on Little Deals.
Yeah.
You want to do $30 million in Belize. Have you ever done anything like that? Have you
Have you made 30,000 in Belize?
right?
You know what I
Have you
mean?
tuned into the politics there, the local,
Yeah.
sentiment against people bringing it out? Like look at Portugal,
Yeah.
look at Spain. They just outlawed Barcelona. I think just said no more STRs.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Like literally all of Spain is
yeah,
contesting.
right.
Yeah.
And you want $30 million going there at a time when the economy is shrinking.
And the international economies are being impacted. Yeah.
100%. Look at '08.
Yeah.
It was the global financial, not the US. It was the GFC.
Yeah.
It wasn't global financial crisis, not American
I
financial
think
crisis.
and yeah, and people forget that, right? Because
Totally, man.
we get so in our
Totally.
yeah. So I think this is so critical. So many of these lessons you've learned, and then, you know, even back when you were working at the utility company, you were willing to pick up books. You've always what
100%.
drove you to the self-development? What drove you to studying markets? People aren't they don't get necessarily taught that in school, right? So what mirrored that for you? What drove you to that?
You know, I think part of it is when you have that immigrant mindset, you're always taught that you have to be better.
Yeah.
Average is never going to cut it. And it's a privilege to be here
Yeah.
and to even have a book. When my mom and dad grew up, they couldn't afford books for them
Yeah.
very readily. So it's a privilege to have them
Yeah.
and make the most of it. I've always had this, burning thing to learn. Even now, I'm still evolving and learning.
Yeah.
And, I go to stuff still, I meet with people.
Yeah.
Um, and books are a great value. I mean, for $20, I can learn everything about X
Yeah.
that someone spent, a lifetime getting a Nobel Prize doing. For
Yeah.
$20, I can get it, or now
Yeah.
free on chat or whatever.
Or on
It's
what?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing. But people don't take advantage.
No.
We all have the same 24 hours,
Right?
and how we use it is what defines us. Remember, information is the currency of success.
Yeah.
Period.
Let's say that again. Information is a currency of success.
Right.
You know, on my Uber ride over here
Hmm.
to come film this morning, I get in
Uh-huh.
and the Uber driver is listening to a podcast on side
Yeah.
hustles,
I
and
love it.
and I'm sitting here and I'm just smiling. So then
Yeah.
I strike up a conversation,
Yeah.
and then I proceed to I'm wanting to, hey, how can I help you? What do you have
Right.
going on?
Right.
All this
You
stuff.
do great with that.
And but it but she could have just been listening to music driving.
Absolutely.
But instead,
Absolutely.
she's improving herself. She is wanting to, um, take that time that's going to pass anyway. We all have the same 24 hours. So I love that. Um, so you have bought businesses and franchise,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Built businesses,
Hmm.
right? Um, People in the real estate world, so right now there's a growing trend around buying businesses.
Sure.
Okay. It's one of the, I would say one of the, yeah,
Yeah.
the biggest growing trends in
Yeah, it's TikToking pretty hard right now.
just I like that. I like that. So
Like most things, sub two's TikToking hard. It slowed down a
all of
little
that.
bit, and
Yeah.
you know,
So as a real estate guy who's also dabbled in the business and franchise world, what are some things that, both of those realms taught you? So for example, what is something that the business world gets that real estate people overlook?
so for me, I had done really well at real estate, and I had some downturns, but I stayed with it. And as Jack said, real estate's really forgiving if you stay with it, and
Yeah.
it is. Even '08, you can overcome if you stay with it.
Yeah.
Keep your main thing your main thing. So in 2016, I took a sabbatical year.
Okay.
I moved to slow area of Central California,
Okay.
and I took a year to I had enough passive income. That's why pajama money's so good, because you can
Mhm.
do other things.
Yeah, it gives you that freedom to choose.
Lived in a small community, and I spent a year just consuming podcasts and stuff.
Mhm.
And most of it I kind of real estate I get by now. I teach some of it, used to anyway. And all of a sudden I was listening to this one podcast, and it kind of blew me away. It was like Rich Dad was, in 2000 for me, or 1999. There was these two professors. They were from the Harvard School of Business. They taught in the Harvard MBA program,
Okay.
and they taught one class. And that class was entrepreneurship through acquisition. Now, I'm a public school kid, man. I'm an inner city public school kid. I'm like, what the heck does that even mean? And I listened to it, and it blew me away. And at the end, and thank you, professors. They have two unusual names, so I'll let you figure it out. But if you need a link, I'll give you a link to the podcast, Courtney. You can put it
And in
in
the
there.
show notes, yeah.
Yeah. But they talked about their class, and what they did is they took MBA students. Now, this is Harvard,
Right. So
and
so what would be perceived as the top of the top?
yeah, all inclusion aside, I'll leave that topic alone. But so they taught students how to buy existing businesses.
Mhm.
And the reasons were manifold in the business. There's no exit for them. Mom and pa has a business, kids don't want it, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
They taught you what businesses to look for, what to avoid, how to find them, how to capitalize and raise capital for them, et cetera, et cetera. I was blown away. It was like a whole different world for me. It's like when you're a hammer, everything needs to be a nail. All of a sudden, I'm like, whoa, these guys have like a saw. This is cool. And at the end, they go, hey, by the way, if you like this, we wrote a book on it, on our whole class. Not everybody can go to Harvard and be in the MBA,
Yeah.
but you can read the book. I couldn't order that book fast enough, man.
Yeah.
And as soon as I got it, I went through and dog-eared that thing. And I go, well, this makes sense. I'm going to do this.
Yeah. Do you remember the book?
It's in the HBR Harvard Business
It's okay. We can
School.
get it another time.
Yeah, and
But
it's
you're
the
going through, and it's, I mean, so that really struck a
How to Buy
chord
a
in you.
Business, I think is what's
Yeah.
called.
So that struck a chord in you.
And then I started digging in.
Yeah.
It's funny because a friend of mine just pinged me here a couple weeks ago and said, hey, I'm looking at, buying an existing business. What should I do? What'd you do? How'd you do it? And I said, man, it's the same thing. Listen to this podcast, read this book, then read that book, then read that book, and then go visit some owners on site. Those that are cooperative, talk to them, buy them a nice dinner, lunch, whatever. See if they'll talk to you about numbers and books,
Mm-hmm.
and just dig in. After 3 or 4, you'll get a good sense for profit margin, gross sales, membership, whatever numbers matrix makes sense. You'll get a feel for it. Doesn't take long. Go visit some sites, look at some reviews, see what customers, is it something that's sustainable? You can't create demand.
Yeah.
If the dog doesn't want to eat, you can't fix that. You can fix
Yeah.
all else, you know? So you can't create demand. So go check it out. And
And
so that's what I did.
important. So you don't want to just buy any business.
No.
Yeah.
In fact, in that book, they tell all the stuff not to buy.
Okay. Well, okay. That helps.
Or they suggest. For me,
Right.
I knew I didn't want anything that was tech heavy. I'm not a tech guy. I've missed it by a generation. I didn't want any restaurants or food, high failure rate.
Yeah.
I didn't want anything with a lot of inventory.
Okay.
If things change, you're sitting on something that's outdated. Look at all the discounting on electronics,
Right.
So I don't want electronics warehouse.
So what was the first business you got into?
So it's purely accidental, if you believe in providence, which I do. So after 2017, my wife and I, fortunately, we've been trying hard to have a baby. We did. And as soon as he was like, our son Isaac, he was 3. Okay, we got to get out of California. This place is whacked.
Yeah.
And I'm from there, and I love Cali. It's a great place to visit. Unfortunately, leadership is not always indicative of what the people are thinking.
So you weren't thinking long term with California?
Yeah, so I moved to Austin, Texas.
Okay.
It was kind of like, a state that gets it, very business friendly, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going to buy a business. My friend's like, do you know anyone there? No.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. You have a job? No, but I haven't had one of those for a long time, so that's pretty normal. All the usual questions. You got to win the battle in your mind before you can win the battle in business.
Yeah.
And I've already like.
If you're not in your own corner, then yeah. How do you expect anyone else to be?
Change is good, not bad.
Yeah.
Change is normal. You got to win the battle up here. Most people don't. And the other thing is I've already made up the mind every morning. I used to be a trustee sale buyer, auction
Yeah.
buyer
Yeah.
for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. I made my living. So every morning, our minds are already made up. We're there to buy.
Yeah.
I didn't get up and come here in the rain and the cold to watch you buy or you buy property.
Right.
I came to buy. So
Yeah.
my decision every morning is I want to have a deal today that I can add to my portfolio.
Yeah.
If you don't have that mindset, you miss all the shots you didn't take.
Right. It's people who are real estate adjacent or business adjacent versus actually out there doing, making offers, doing things.
Exactly. So I went there with the intent of buying a business. I was using the filtering criteria that the nice professors had laid out.
Yeah.
And by the way, professors, if you ever hear this podcast, hit me up. I would love to send you all a nice case of wine or something. You've changed my life. So please. Um, and so I went to Austin. I started purely again, I needed a chiropractic adjustment. I Googled chiropractor near me, go to one, and it was a national franchise. It worked out. I'm like, how do I do one of these? I had no clue. They call corporate.
So we're just curious,
Yeah.
right?
And so they said, well, this territory is sold out. I'm like, okay, but we have some down in San Antonio, which is about 80 miles away. So I went down there and started digging around. Well, it turns out there was a gentleman that wanted to sell an existing store.
Okay. This chiropractor.
Chiropractic store. I
Yeah.
call them stores or locations. So
Yeah.
I talked to him. I met with him. Really nice guy, Jose Lopez. Great guy. We're friends now. And I'm like, Jose, this is a nice business. Why would you want to sell a nice business like this?
Sure.
Sound familiar?
Yes.
It's the same darn thing, right?
Right. So you had learned that in the real estate
I'm like,
world,
this
right?
looks.
Why are you wanting to sell this house? Why are you wanting to sell this business?
Why would? And I'm looking at your numbers, man. They look good. They're trending up. You got a nice location. You're in the path of progress. And he's like, I hate Saturdays. I'm like, come again? I don't get that. What do you mean? Because I have 4 boys. My wife and I, they all play soccer. They're pretty good.
And
She takes a couple of them. I take, but I have to go to the store. See, he didn't outsource.
yeah.
And
Okay.
they both have jobs Monday through Friday. So it's every Saturday it's a tussle. But do we go to the store to help run things, bring in paper towels
Yeah.
and cleaner, or do we go to our son's soccer? So I'm just gonna sell it. He had a pretty good job,
Yeah.
so he sold me the store.
Yeah.
He just had one small stipulation, that he had an adjoining territory. He kept an option on it for 4 years that he could have, I think it was 25% with me. He liked what he heard, and we hit it off. So he's like, I want to invest with you, man.
Yeah.
So I'll sell you this one, but I want an option
Yeah.
to do a store with you. I'm like, all right, fair enough. The
Okay.
4-year
So maybe
option.
not still stay involved with this one, but maybe be a part of the
He just
one.
wanted to be capital.
Yeah.
And the last thing I needed at that point in my life was equity capital partners.
Yeah.
And I can raise capital just fine. I
Mhm.
do capital, no equity. Why would I do here, equity, 25%?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not how I work. But cool.
But it's what would have made the deal work. So did you do it
I
because?
did it because it made the deal work.
Yeah.
It's you don't dance with the house, you dance with the people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was his non-negotiable. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I'll appease him. But in return, the old, if I give you that, if I'll do that for you, what will you do for me?
Hmm.
If you haven't listened to Roger Dawson 100 times on the power of negotiating, please
Right.
do. Go get that.
Thank you, Nightingale Koning. Yeah.
Yeah, whenever you give something up, you give up a concession, you ask for it. Well, if Courtney, I can do that, can you help me with, a longer close date
Yeah.
or whatever it is you need? So I'm like, all right. So then I got a price reduction.
Okay.
That was my kind of,
Yeah. So
and,
okay, if this then that.
and we got it. We worked out just fine. Interesting story. I went back to him 3 years and like 6 months later and said, we did this deal. Your option's expiring.
In the
I'm
next
going to
few
open a
months.
store there, but I'm going to wait till January because it makes business sense. And I'm an honorable guy, so I'm giving you an opportunity. Can I give you some money to just buy you out now?
Hmm.
I can wait till January and you're gone. And he goes, wow, that's pretty cool. So I bought him out for a very meager amount of money, like 10 grand.
Hmm.
And then I opened the store without him. He released my option.
Hmm. So then you didn't have to have that equity
Right.
partner.
So I opened that store. It cost me about 250 grand to open it. I
So
don't
this
know.
was the new store.
It was an adjacent territory.
Yeah.
I sold that thing for like 750,000. I don't know, a year later.
Okay. Okay.
But that 10 grand to get rid of the option. So there is some overlap of our skills.
Yeah. And so these things that you learned in the real estate world, when it comes into the business world, sometimes I find people who are like, "Oh, I only want to be about business or I only want to
Right,
be about real estate,"
right.
which I can appreciate. But I think there's lessons we can learn from both, and I hear so many of your stories were things you learned in the real estate world that you
100%.
carried over into the
Right.
business world.
In fact, it was kind of surprising when I got into the business side, um, how people didn't have the foundations. Like I learned from Dykes all about entities, not that I know all about them, but he
Mhm.
did, and I learned from him. And Pete and tax reduction. And I get into the business world, and people are like, I don't know how to set up an LLC.
Yeah.
Uh,
One of the
what?
biggest business owners I know, he's still trying to figure that stuff out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I need an EIN. My bank says, what do I do?
Yeah.
And some real basic stuff. They've never heard of an
Yeah.
option. They've never raised capital.
Yeah.
They're always like, well, the SBA says it's financeable.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you got to personally guarantee your house, dude.
Yeah.
You want to do that? I don't.
Yeah.
My wife doesn't,
Yeah.
and try to negotiate with the SBA if things don't go well.
Right.
Try to negotiate with a real human being, as Pete says, you'll
Yeah.
probably have a better chance.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff business, if you're in franchising, there's some interesting dynamics like territories. If you have a McDonald's, no one's going to open a McDonald's across the street. Now, some franchises don't honor that, and it's caused some bad goodwill, like 7-Eleven and some others, Burger King, whatever. There's been a lot of tussle, but overall, a good franchise will say, all right, this is your, 3x3, and no one else can come in here.
Yeah.
And so there's competition for the good territories.
Okay.
And the good operators get the good territories. If you've done well here, I'm going to give you the one next to it because I want it to succeed. I'm not going to give it to some unknown with,
That it
limited
might fail with,
capital.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just the first person with money.
No, it isn't. It is given out on a merit basis, hopefully, if it's a good franchise,
Yeah.
and your ability to succeed and your capacity.
Yeah.
They look at all those things. So I come
That
along
capacity
and
part's huge.
huge. And, I come along and I'm like, so these territories are only 30 grand a piece. Great. I'll take all of them that are available in my city. Well, there's 5 of them. Okay, great. Can I wire some money to you? And no one ever saw that happen. I looked at it like for 30 grand, I got a 2-year option on the territory, exclusive. That's pretty
In a
good math.
franchise that has some good trending upward,
100%. It was
yeah.
a great time for them.
And
So,
so for you, you're saying, hey, if I can lock in today's price, this thing is going, and
absolutely.
it's got good trends upwards, and so you're like, if I can just lock it in today,
Why wouldn't
and
I? And
yeah,
there's no penalty if I don't open in 2 years, they might extend. So I got an opportunity to have a conversation. If
yeah,
I've done well over here, I just need a little more time, or I'm building it, I can't open it just yet. But there's 30 grand's a very small thing to do to tie up $1 million business
yeah.
in my world.
Well, and so, but you had the foresight, so to be able to think, okay, this is the price I
Absolutely.
can get at today. Let me see if I can lock it up, and then what can I do over
100%.
time? And then, so you had multiple opportunities where you were
Mhm.
doing that with franchises, and you told me that they never saw it coming.
Never saw it coming.
Why do you think that was?
Because people don't think that way. And people look at risk very conservative. Remember, I already made the decision when I woke up.
I'm gonna
Lord,
buy
help
today.
me find a deal today.
Yeah,
Please put one in front of me,
yeah.
because I am
You're
ready.
ready. Yeah,
I got, my target here. I'm ready. Trigger fingers ready. Just put something in there in that scope that, works for me.
yeah,
And when people call me, like Pete says, always accept the deal and then counter.
yeah,
So I'm always like, when someone calls me with a potential deal, I'm like, instead of saying no, how can we make it work?
yeah.
What can we do to make it work?
Right.
And so that was me. I was like, well, if it explodes, I'll be out 150 grand. It's not the end of the world, but if it works, it'll be 7 figures deep. So I did it. So
So you're learning to think, to kind of pull out, don't get so into that deal that you're not thinking far, like what could this actually be? But what did getting into, the franchises, um, and then, buying these businesses, what were some of those things that what did that teach you?
it's a whole different world. A small business has a lot of great attributes. There's some distinct tax advantages. Um, there's the ability to be um, growing it yourself.
Hmm.
No matter how good I am with my Apple phone, which I'm not, I can't improve its stock.
Yeah,
But with better marketing, better systems, I can improve my business.
yeah,
And so you have some unique abilities. It's very scalable. It's institutionally financeable. SBA will loan you almost 90%.
yeah,
So there's a lot of attributes. If you get into a franchise system, there's some trade-offs. You lose some control.
hmm,
You have to wear a purple shirt maybe, or a green
Right.
shirt. Maybe you like blue. I like
Right.
blue. You have to put it here. Maybe I want to put the store across the street.
Right.
They're going to help you with the location.
Right.
And you have to buy certain things. You have to buy widgets from them.
Yeah.
Their food, the microwaves, the whatevers. Maybe it's not the best deal.
You're stepping into their processes. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the one thing that was really weird for me was all of a sudden, now I'm in this thing for 16 years, have complete control of my own calendar. All of a sudden, other people have control of my calendar.
Yeah.
They can book meetings with me. I don't have any say-so in it. They can force me to attend things. And if you miss so many, you're out,
Yeah.
kind of deal. And that was weird for me. Like, I've never had people fill my calendar.
Yeah.
Like, I have the app, but no one has access to it,
Yeah.
My calendar is sacred. And all of a sudden, people are like, oh, you have a meeting at 2.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to take my son fishing, Doesn't matter. So, but there's a lot of good attributes too. So you kind of have to balance it out.
Yeah.
And if your goal is to run it forever, that's one thing. That wasn't my goal.
Yeah. Because your goal was, in essence, flipping it.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
So from day one, when I started this, my goal was to scale it. I have this saying, scale it or fail it. If-
What do you mean by that?
So if you're a real estate investor and you have a day job, you're whatever, an engineer or something, and you have 2 rentals.
Mhm.
If one's vacant, you kind of have a problem. You have 50% vacant. If you
Yeah.
had 10 rentals, one's vacant, you only have a 10% vacancy rate, less of a
Yeah.
problem. So when people say, well, it's too risky, I don't want 10 rentals, it's actually more risky to have 2, in my opinion.
So you're meaning by scale it or fail it, it is you need some economies of scale to reduce risk.
And if it's good, I mean, if you like the restaurant, go back there and eat again.
Yeah.
I mean, we tend to go to the same
If
restaurants
it
over and
works for
over.
you, yeah.
Yeah. So scale it. Then
Yeah.
you don't have to go learn a bunch of new stuff.
Yeah.
I already have the purple shirts. I'm good.
And so when within the franchise models, when you bought multiple, it was because it worked for you.
It was the same, and I could have one general manager. I could
Mhm.
have one office manager. They could kind of go around and make
Mhm.
things happen. So there's a lot of good with it. There's some trade-offs. But my goal was to scale it enough. I studied what an institutional buyer would want. Day one, they wanted $1 million of net cash flow, EBITDA, whatever you want to call it, at least minimum, or they don't want to look at it. They wanted systems in place. They wanted management in place. They wanted good books,
So you were thinking with the end in mind.
100%.
And so your goal was to sell to an institutional
That was my
buyer,
goal.
and so you're like, "Well, let me
Aggregate.
build it to something where it would be
Mhm,
something they would want to buy."
mhm.
Wow, okay.
So it was interesting because I remember to this day, my dentist there in Texas, these were all in Texas and California, I had 2 states going, but I lived in Texas. I went in for my last cleaning. I was leaving town. I was going to retire. I spent some time up in the Smoky Mountains and, wanted to take a year off.
Mhm.
I'm big on sabbatical retool. So I went in for my last cleaning. He goes, Reg, one of the things I admire about you. I'm like, Doc, what is that? He goes, I remember you came in here 4 years ago
Mhm.
and you told me exactly what you were going to do with these businesses.
Mhm.
And here it is. It's your last day. You just got a huge check. You did exactly what you said. He goes,
Yeah.
I don't see that.
Yeah.
And because I had the end, it's not that I'm great. I just had an end in mind, and I
You had a
studied
plan and you worked it.
how to get there.
Yeah.
If I can create this, somebody's going to pay 4 or 5 times the net cash flow. That's all I need to
Yeah.
know. So if
Yeah.
I create $1 million, somebody's going to pay me $5 million. Did I hear that right? Cool. Let me go create the $1 million. And if I can create 1.5 million, and so on and so forth.
So you're dealing with the end in mind. So in business world, you're thinking, I'm gonna build this together. Let's pull that to real estate. How should real estate investors take that and apply it to what they're doing?
So let me just finish out this thread on the business.
Let's
So
do that.
if I may, it ties to what my real estate training about studying markets.
Yeah.
I knew I sold this thing a couple years ago, and I already knew that the economy was shifting,
Yeah.
and I already knew that we've had so many years of good. You got to be a Joseph. You got to store some grain. And I also knew that the cost of capital was cheap right now, but it's going up.
Yeah.
So I saw a lot of rain clouds.
Yeah.
I sold a perfectly performing business with a lot of cash flow because I saw rain clouds.
Yeah.
As soon as capital costs more, I wouldn't get nearly as much for the business because they're inversely cost of capital versus
Yeah.
what someone's willing to pay for it.
So when things were good,
things were great. I had 2 years of amazing books.
Yeah.
Everything was running
And people can even
beautifully.
say it could have kept going.
Right, but I know
And
better.
yeah,
You know, you want to double your money, the best way is fold it in half, put it in your pocket.
yeah,
And so I got out at a time that I thought was good. And sure enough, now the economy's stalling, brands are struggling,
yes,
memberships are down. Even
yes,
Starbucks is having a hard time selling coffee.
yeah. I mean, to sell right now would look very different.
Right, but most people will be, oh, I don't want to pay the taxes. Well, you're going to get less. The net is the same. I didn't 1031. I didn't go to opportunity zones. I didn't move to, weird places like Puerto Rico or whatever. I just paid the taxes, and people looked at me like, that's kind of silly. But you know what? If I got $1 million less a year later or 2 years later, am I
Yeah,
not at the same place?
right. So that does play a factor.
Absolutely.
And, I do want to correlate this to real estate.
Those are all real estate skills, by the way,
Yeah, these are
that I
things that you have
study
learned,
and do
right?
dearly.
Studying the markets. That
Right,
is so critical. I think so many investors, and I would even argue business people, just entrepreneurs in general, they're so focused on their widget, whether it's houses
right,
or whatever other thing,
right,
that they're not thinking of the outside pressures and dynamics of the market.
right. And let me just throw a book out for you. Robert Campbell, good friend of mine, writes a newsletter, superb investor out of San Diego. He wrote the book called Real Estate Market Timing.
Okay.
Great book. You got to read it. He has all the data points that he monitors, and he can predict pretty accurately what's going to happen or about to happen
Hmm.
or did happen. Robert Campbell, he used to do seminars. He's kind of getting up there like a
Right.
lot of my mentors, but
Sure. But
really
I
good
think
guy.
that part's so many people, they're just, I'm gonna wake up today and focus on making money. And although those things are important, it's like, but the outside pressures matter. The market
Very
conditions and market
much
cycles
so.
matters. And so, um,
It doesn't mean you can't excel in them. You just have to recognize
yeah.
that, I mean, it's mind boggling, but you can go trout fishing in the rain. As my guide said, well, the fish are already wet. What's your problem? Okay. As I was whining about it's raining, we can't
Right.
fish today. She's like,
Right. But you might need to bring different gear. You might need it, a different
different
guide might
fly,
be better or whatever.
different flies going in the water for
Yeah.
sure.
And so all of these things are so critical, and these are hard lessons learned, but then people can curb that learning curve by listening to people who've been there and done that, right? And so that's the
Mhm,
beauty of stuff like the self-development, the books,
mhm.
and the podcast.
Absolutely. And
Um,
who you follow. Like Robert Campbell does a newsletter, at least he very, very recently did. There's people that talk about this stuff. It's
yeah.
not like, I mean, I read a lot of it. Um,
And so listening to what other folks have to say about what's going on, so looking at the data, right?
mhm, mhm,
I know I got introduced to macroeconomics, I feel like only in the last 2 years or so,
mhm,
where I actually pay attention and I listen to those things. And I like to listen to from a few different folks, so I'm not
mhm.
just listening to one person, and especially if that one person might be a doomsday guy.
Right,
You
exactly.
wanna kind of spread it out so that you're not in the echo chamber of just
That's
one
right.
person. But and that's informed my decision. Am I running off and selling everything just because I heard one podcast?
Right.
No, but I'm trying to inform my decisions.
And even in, a time when it might not be the greatest time to acquire, if you can get something that makes sense, be it zero financing or something else that's a kicker, maybe you got a free lot in addition to the house.
Mhm.
If there's a kicker in it, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying do it smartly.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
key.
Well, going back to risk management,
Yeah,
right? Saying, hey, how can I find some safety in this,
yeah,
right? There's some
exactly.
tumultuous waters out there.
Right,
How can I do this safely?
right.
So you do lending,
I do.
and one of the we start to wrap this up. I've got a few more questions for you.
Sure.
Um, so you do lending. That's predominantly a lot of what you do now, right?
I do, but I do it a little differently. A lot of people do wrap lending, this, that, and the other. I do a lot of equity share lending.
Okay.
So if I'm
So you're
going to put up,
participating in
I'm
deals.
participating. If I'm putting up capital, it's usually with a seasoned investor that's scaling.
Hmm.
So I'm betting on the jockey
Hmm.
and I'm participating. It doesn't make sense when someone has, a deal and they want 100% financing, 120%. Basically, they have an address under contract. You should just
Hmm.
wholesale that. If you want
Right.
me to finance the whole thing, I'm taking all the risk.
Right.
Why don't I just hire the contractor and you wholesale it?
Yeah.
So if I'm not participating, what's the point?
Yeah.
And there's lenders, even Wall Street money, pardon me, that will do that. So for me, I want to participate. Since I'm taking most of the risk, I want to participate in some of the growth. That only
Yeah.
seems fair in my world.
Right.
So I do a
So it's
lot of
not
equity.
just thinking in the terms of the cost of capital, meaning the interest, but it's also, hey, I want a piece of this
Right.
deal.
And in return, I'll help you underwrite it. I won't source it because I don't source deals anymore, but I'll help you with the asset class. I'll help you with the coaching, the
Hmm.
structuring,
Hmm.
making sure, it's a safe asset, safe debt, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of that. Um,
And so, you know, with that being a lot of what you're doing, these days, um, what are you, as you're looking at the current market right now,
mhm.
um, how are you mitigating risk?
That's a good question. First of all, I'm not leveraging very hard. I'm using my own capital for the most part.
Hmm. Okay.
So if I need to extend, I extend. My
Hmm.
yield goes down, it goes down. It's not the end of the world.
Hmm.
Blended portfolio, I'll be fine. I don't miss too many meals. So,
Yeah.
you blend it out.
Okay.
It's safe.
Hmm.
Um, I'm concentrating on certain asset classes that I think will do well.
Hmm.
I still like certain things like, and no secret, I'm happy to share. Self storage, I think, still makes sense. I think people have overhyped mobile home parks. It's a great asset class, but the Sam Zells of the world have let the world know that this works. And so people are kind of,
Hmm.
not say you can't find one, but maybe it's smaller stuff. Multifamily has been found. So it's trying to find assets that aren't like, TikTok heavy, if you will.
So that they're
Affordable.
not, yeah, so that they're not, multifamily. When you said it's been found, yeah, every multifamily owner thinks that they own gold and they're trying to sell it for that. And so it's really hard to get a deal on that.
That and then the way it's structured, the reset of the loan and this and that. So I'm focusing on certain sectors like affordable housing.
Mhm.
I'm uh, deep into providing solutions through development of manufactured homes
Mhm.
on their own land. So we've got a lot of those projects going. A couple of buddies of mine have been doing it for a while. We collaborate and we're doing a lot of that. So I like that kind of stuff. I like value add plays. I just bought a lot with a partner. When I say I bought, I'm the financier, they're the acquisition, and we're splitting it. And then we're going to develop 2 homes.
Okay.
So things like that are my lot cost just went to half.
Yeah.
The owner never saw it coming.
Hmm.
We knew it. We bought, I'm going to say 5 acres, and we knew we could split it. Most likely, we did our due diligence, closed on it. Now we have 2 lots. We're going to build 2 houses.
Yeah.
So things like that help mitigate where we are.
Yeah.
Maybe you bought a 2-on-1, so the rents work better. Maybe you're
Two
going
on
to
one, you
add
mean
in
like a
it,
duplex or
whatever, 2 structures
yeah,
on one, a duplex,
something like that. Yep.
2 individuals,
An
or you're
ADU or
going to
something like that.
add
Yeah.
an ADU or something
Yeah.
that will help make it work.
Yeah.
So maybe you got some soft debt. So you got to figure out a way.
What would you classify as soft debt?
Anything to me, 8% or less, that's got a normal timeline to it.
Hmm. So
Not
not
as
short term.
No,
So
balloons are for clowns. We all know that.
yeah.
Thank you, Pete.
Yeah.
So an ability to extend.
Yeah.
One of the things I ask people right now is, "What? That sounds great. What's your plan B?"
Yeah.
You don't
Right,
have
because a
one.
lot of things are not going according to
Exactly.
plan,
Right.
and so folks, though, they're all like, "I'm gonna make all the shots I'm shooting." Oh, okay, what's your plan B in case it
Exactly.
doesn't, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Um
I've got lots of examples. Quick, I was doing some infill development in Houston in
Mhm.
2018, 16, 17, 18 with a builder. I was the capital he was building. Well, the last two, there was an oil bust. We couldn't give the house, beautiful houses, northeast side of Houston, New Caney,
Mhm.
and we couldn't give them away.
Yeah.
But it was my capital.
Mhm.
So what do? They're beautiful. As much as I hate to, we rented them out.
Yeah.
2 years later, I sold one on owner financing. The other two, I rented it out. 2 years later, we repainted it, sodded it up, and sold them to Zillow.
Yeah.
You
Because
know,
the market was back
came
to
back 2 years later.
yeah,
So I had a
and so
plan B
time
and a
being
plan
forgiving.
C.
Yeah.
One was owner financing was plan B. Plan C was rent them and then sell them later.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that, soft debt allows you to do that.
Yeah, and I like that, because on the contrary, hard debt is what a lot of people are getting hurtful with. So that is that
Oh,
more
wait, we got a good dose of institutional hard debt. When you hear these stories from the old timers about they called all my notes due, you go, hey, that'll never happen to me. In 2008, it happened to every single credit line pretty much in America that was institutional.
yeah.
Every credit line got shut down and called due immediately, which if you
Mhm.
read the 38 pages, they have the ability to do that, mine included.
Yeah.
So,
And those are the things where it's like that's why I glean from folks who've been through multiple cycles because when you've only been going with the wind against your
Right.
back, right? You're
Right.
like, oh, that won't happen.
I'll give you a really good example personally. I
Okay.
had a credit line with the local bank,
Okay.
and they kept increasing. It was unsecured, meaning personal guarantee, go do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Resets once a year, zero it out, you go use it again. They kept increasing it from '03, '04, '05. I got to $1.5 million.
So you're doing all your flips with that?
Flips, and I was arbitraging. They're
Okay.
loaning money at 6, 7%.
Okay.
I'm charging 12 and 2, whatever, 12 and 3.
Yep.
Worked all day. And I had a client manager, VP at the bank. He's like, Reg, we love your model. We'll just keep increasing. We love what you do. You're debt free, you got good credit, you're good. And I go, well, what happens if you guys ever call it due? Oh, we'll give you a nice 5-year term out. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. All of a sudden, a wait hits. I call my branch guy, VP of the bank, and I'm giving him this spiel about why are you calling it due with 30 days? I can't do that. And I'm telling him about my payment history, my credit, my this, my, he goes, dude, I'm just going to tell you off the record. Come Monday, we won't be a bank anymore. Saturday, the regulators are coming in. Monday, I won't have a job. I'm
Yeah.
telling you because we have a relationship.
Yeah.
So it isn't about you. I'm telling them all the
This is
reasons.
bigger than you.
It
This
is
is
bigger than
like
the whole economy, man. All of a sudden, I get this thing about you owe us $1.5 million in 30 days. No one's going to be able to do that in 2008, man. And they didn't want to restructure. So
how did you figure that out?
it was messy. I
Yeah.
paid it back.
What you said earlier, it was not quick.
No.
It was messy, but
We figured it
you
out. I
figured it
just
out.
had to reposition a whole bunch. It's like causing a crisis in my world for no reason.
Yeah.
And that's what banks typically do with bad
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. And no one predicted, but that's the thing with black swan events. No one predicts it. And that's those outside pressures you can't
Yep.
control, but you can control your own world. So speaking of that, what's one lesson that if you would have learned it sooner, you would have your success would have accelerated? That lesson that was hard to learn that took maybe too long to learn.
There's a lot of lessons. I don't know if we can, let's just talk about some of them.
Sure.
Number one, there's a lot to learn here. You're not going to do it alone. Find a great mentor early on
Mhm.
and just make yourself invaluable in their life.
Mhm.
Figure it out. Whether you got to mow their lawn, bring them coffee, I don't care.
Yeah.
Walk their dog. Figure it out where you're invaluable.
Yeah.
And there's some great examples of people doing that. I admired that Bill Cook moved to Tampa so he could be around Pete every day.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, and it's, on the drive here, the Uber drivers listened to podcast and the podcast said something great. And I loved what they said. They said everyone has mentors that they think are their mentor, but it's
Mhm,
the people they just really are inspired by and they look up to.
mhm, mhm.
You need a tangible in-person mentor, someone who's in
Abs.
your air that you're
Yep.
having meals with it.
Yep.
So not just someone that you're listening to their
Yep.
podcast to, right?
In your market that you can actually drive around with. Become invaluable to them,
Yeah.
even if you got to work for free. Be a bartender at night, I don't care, but be around with them in the daytime.
Yeah.
Figure it out. Be tax efficient from day one.
Mhm.
There's no point in building all this and then you have to look for a 1031. You
Mhm.
got $3 million equity trapped and it's the top of the market and you got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Had you bought them in your 401k, not your IRA, but your 401k and leverage, you would have probably been okay.
Yeah.
Y-
Tax efficient from day one. So many people, tax is an afterthought.
It's your
Why do you think that
partner
is? Yeah.
because most people have a tax preparer.
Mhm.
Someone that uses software and spits out a return. They don't have
Yeah.
a tax strategist
Yeah.
because they don't really exist.
Yeah.
You kind of have to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah. So you've
So,
got to get informed so you're
yep,
an informed participant in the conversation.
because they're your partner, whether you realize or not. The IRS and you are a partnership.
Yeah.
Be structured properly day one so that you can grow with it.
Yeah.
Do you have an S corp? Are you taking the income dividend split? Are you fully funding your
Yeah.
pension plan? Are you doing the mega Roth?
Yeah.
Are you growing it self-directed?
Yeah.
All these things are important. You don't have to, if you build the right foundation, you can go up, 100 stories, right?
Yeah.
But people have the wrong foundations.
Yeah.
So take the time to do that and then always be evolving, man. Follow trends and learn. Follow people that put out good content like
Mhm.
yourself.
Yeah.
Like I listen to some of your interviews and I'm just like, wow, man, there's some things here I'm glad I listened because it's making me more aware of them.
Yeah. I
So
appreciate that. Yeah.
always stay, in front of the curve and that'll help you.
Yeah. Well, look, I appreciate that. Any final thoughts as we start to wrap up here? I think, well, I did want to ask you one more question.
Sure.
You mentioned those sabbatical years. I,
Mhm.
I would be amiss if I didn't ask this because it's been on my mind since you've mentioned it. You mentioned two separate times in this conversation you took a sabbatical year.
Mhm.
Why is that?
to retool. And it wasn't that, I'm burned out or I'm this or that. I needed to be better
So
business
retool.
wise.
You're like, you needed to go get more tools.
Yeah, don't wish it were easier.
Wish you were better.
Wish you were better. So I needed to be better.
Yeah.
And this is from someone who was probably at the top of their game with plenty going on for the good. It wasn't like, it's easy to try to get better when you're down low.
When
And
you're getting started. You're like,
yeah,
oh, I need more tools when I'm
or I
getting
just lost
started.
everything and, I'm living in my truck. But I was at the top of my game.
You were having great exits,
And
major exits, but you're still saying, I need to go retool.
I wanted to go to the next level. And to
Yeah.
do that, I had to be better.
Yeah.
I wanted to be in a different room.
Yeah.
The room I was in, I was pretty good. Not the best, but pretty good. I could hold my own. I'm
Yeah.
okay. But
Yeah.
I wanted to be in the next room. I wanted to be in the Decamillionaire room.
So when, Reggie, who's working at the utility company, he's wanting to retool himself, right?
I wanted to get in the millionaire room.
Exactly. And then when you're wanting to get, from the flipping 50 houses a year, right?
Right.
It's
Financial
consistently
independence room.
all those the financial independence room. And then from there,
I wanted to get to the, put your middle finger up room.
where you
to the
never
world.
have a worry ever again.
Right.
And then, but, so I love that you talked about taking that time and that time to be, it's not a burnout time, but it's a retooling time.
And mind you, I didn't waste it. I got the equivalent of probably an MBA that year in various topics that I chose.
Yeah.
It wasn't I'm going to go sit on a beach and fry my brain.
Yeah.
I worked harder that year than I did the year before.
So it's very purposeful, right?
Very much so.
And so listening to podcasts, reading books,
moving to a slower area, living out in the country. My wife's totally on board.
Yeah. Which is, that's important.
Totally. We did set a lot of time for recreation and other things. We got a couple trips in and all that, but
It's very intentional.
and then that allowed me to go into the next room.
How did you know when you were ready with your tools? That sabbatical year was done.
I don't know if you ever know you're ready, but I was ready to try the waters. Like I suck at fly fishing. All my friends will tell you that, but I'm ready to try the waters. And I had spent my 10,000 hours. Okay. I'm feeling very comfortable. I guess it's when you're comfortable.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the best swimmer, but you're comfortable in the pool.
Yeah.
I teach my son all the time, just be comfortable, be able to get to the edge.
Yeah.
You don't have to be the greatest swimmer, but be comfortable. I was very comfortable in business. And so for me, it was like time.
Yeah. I love that. And I did have the other question as I'm thinking through. What do you go back and tell day one, Reggie? What advice do you give him?
People always, modeling is a great thing, and knowing what you know now is always a good question. What would you do? For me, it's real clear cut, man. If I had to start over, or if I know it day one, go find a great mentor. Real quick story. 2012, top of my game, dominated the Sacramento market, ran a large RIA. And I decided, if I claim to be financial independent, which I think I am, I've always wanted to live by the beach. Doggone it, I want to move to the beach. So I moved to San Diego.
Yeah.
Didn't know anybody there, had spoken at the RIA there a few times, but that was about it.
Yeah.
But I didn't care. I could dominate. I knew it. I was confident, And so I go to my first RIA meeting. This young man comes up to me, Chinese gentleman, really nice young man. He's probably 23, 24. And he goes, introduces himself. He goes, I know you like to go to a lot of meetings. And I've watched you, you know a lot of people. I go to most of the meetings. Can I drive you to them? You can focus on emails, drink coffee, and make phone calls. I'll drive you to any meetup, anytime, anywhere in Southern
And in California with the traffic, that's a big offer.
Well, and he hit my right button. I hate driving.
You're
Anybody,
going by your
I'll buy
Tesla
gas, I'll buy lunch, I'll buy dinner, I'll pay anything. I don't like to drive.
Yeah.
It's a total waste of time. I could be doing other things
Yeah.
for me. And man, this guy said the right thing. I go, you're on. In the next 2 years, we became really good friends.
Yeah.
And he got into so many conferences and seminars. I'd go, who's that? Oh, that's my driver. Like, oh, okay. I mean, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You're a player, you got a driver, right?
Yeah.
We became really good friends. But you know what? He spent so much time with me. He heard every phone call, every negotiation. I took time to mentor him how to structure, how to raise capital.
Yeah.
I wanted him to hit financial independence. By year 2, it got to where I'd call him every day. This is where we're going. This is what we're doing. He became invaluable.
Yeah.
I kind of shed a tear when I moved out of San Diego.
Yeah.
But then he went on to drive for another key person.
Yeah.
Same thing. So create that, man, you'll get there a lot faster.
I love that. I think I heard it said one time, if you don't have a seat at the table, serve some water, right?
Exactly.
It's
Be in
that
the
I
room. Just
yeah,
be in the
get in the
room,
room,
man.
and so many people almost can't humble themselves, right? And I'm like,
Dude.
look, Pete Fortunato, I can't go buy a mentorship with him.
Right.
What am I gonna do? Well,
Mow his lawn.
I'm doing whatever I can. I'm like,
Yeah.
y'all need someone to check on audio during the class. You need someone
Right.
to make sure that the coffee's being stocked in the back of the
Exactly.
conference room. I'm your gal.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
how can I'm looking for ways to show up?
I used to bring Dyke snacks all the time
Yeah,
because I wanted to make sure he was fully fueled for his 2 days. In the afternoon,
yeah,
drag, I'd bring him a nice cup of coffee, bring him a snack, and he so appreciated it.
yeah,
It's funny how coffee and a bag of nuts will do for you,
yeah, yeah.
or whatever
But but
snack.
but but it's the thing that you're looking and you're saying the worst question someone asks is, how can I bring value to you? Then you're putting the onus on
Right.
me
You figure
to
it out.
yeah, you figure it out.
For Pete, I know he likes books. I
Mhm.
admire the man. I know he lost a lot of books
Yeah,
recently due to the unfortunate. I just sent him a couple of books.
yeah,
You see him just go, wow. I'm
yeah.
like, these are my library, but I want you to have them.
I look, that's one of my biggest focuses right now is how can I help him recuperate that?
Yeah. I sent him a
Um,
couple of books that, I
yeah,
had on PDF, had scanned or gotten a PDF,
yeah,
and he just lit up. He was great.
yeah.
And he's given so much. This isn't a 1/1000th of what he's given me, but
Sure.
it was a show of appreciation, respect, honor.
I love that. I love that. So I know better than to ask, how can people get in touch with you?
Right.
You're not really like, here's my social media channels, here's my email.
Right.
But I will say you have been on some other podcasts.
Hmm.
And so I think if people want to learn some more from you, they could go search out Reggie
Hmm.
Lal on other
Hmm.
podcasts where you've been
Um,
on episodes.
yeah, real quick. So I'm very selective
Hmm.
on who I will be on the stage with or will teach for. I
Yeah.
don't teach much anymore. And I really like a couple of people. So I decided to be Sunrisers is a group of believers that talk
Yeah.
about
Wendy
spiritual.
Sweet
Wendy
runs
Sweet
that.
and her
Yep.
group. Jim was on this morning. And she asked me, hey, you know a lot. Do you mind being on there? I was honored to. Rich Lennon, I love the content he puts out. I
Hmm.
like his model. I think he's a high integrity guy.
Yep.
I
He's got a
agreed.
podcast that you were
I
on
did
an
a
episode.
podcast. So if you want to follow me, Rich Lennon, I don't know what podcast number, but you can
You
Google
can
and
look
find
it up.
out.
Yeah.
I did a Sunrisers meeting about a month ago on
Mhm.
YouTube. Just type in Sunrisers or my name and you'll see it. I love the content. Your interview with Pete Fortunato was just
Mhm.
gold.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I'm
I
like, all
revisit
right.
that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one I could listen to all day. Leon Johnson, you've done some stuff with.
Mhm.
Awesome guy.
Yeah.
Great fly fisherman too.
Yeah.
Leon, we still got to
He's
get
probably
out.
fin
I'm waiting for that invite,
I'm
man.
actually trying to get my first podcast episode with him. Actually, I've had him speak at my RIA
Be
and I've
awesome.
had some things, but I'm like, we're trying to actually line up our schedules to get
Yeah.
him on the podcast, but he's fly fishing.
Yeah. And actually, he did invite me. I just couldn't make it. It was a bad month. Gary Johnson's doing a workshop this weekend. Terrific class. I've
Yes,
been
what I'm
numerous
here for. Yep.
times. You're here for it. Great
Yeah.
guy, great person, great content. So those are the things that you want to align with.
Yeah.
As far as reaching me, I'm at that point in life where time is the only resource I can't add.
You're very protective of
So
it.
I'm very
Yeah.
protective. My calendar is not really available. I mentor several people, by the way. I do give
Yeah.
up a lot of time.
But it's on purpose.
It's on
Yeah.
purpose and it's on my timeline. The
Yeah.
last thing I want to do is do a podcast and then I get 30 emails about what's a wrap.
Yeah.
There's AI, man. You can figure that out.
Well, and I hope you guys are listening to this. It's not what's his email or his social so you can go and send him your very specific question. He just gave you a ton of resources, right? And he
Exactly.
says these are valuable things. So if you value what he has, go learn those resources. I'm here for Gary's class this weekend. I
That is awesome.
absolutely love it as well.
That
I've
is
been
awesome.
numerous times. All of those things,
For
yes.
example, that Sunrisers, I in 35 minutes gave you 25 years of nuggets. It
Yeah.
is full of nuggets, man.
Yeah.
I spent like 2 weeks in my cave, my office, just getting ready for that because I respect
Yeah.
people's time. Better questions would be, hey, you read a lot. What do you read?
Yeah.
Hey, you follow the market. What tools do you use? How do I
Yeah.
get a hold? Those are better questions.
Yeah.
You know what? Other than Rich Dad,
Yeah.
I'm at this stage. What else should I read? I want to increase my 401k. What resources would help me
Right.
get there?
Well, and it's a
Those are
reminder
better
you can't
questions.
always latch to an individual.
No.
Some people, I feel like in this day and age, people always want to latch to an individual, but sometimes they don't want that. So you don't get that that opportunity.
Right.
And so then you say, okay, well, then what can I learn? And where are the places that they currently already are, right?
Yeah.
Sunrisers, these different podcast episodes. Um,
Learn the strategy, not the
yeah,
person.
yeah,
Uh, Pardon me, their biases may not work for you. Like I have,
yeah,
as Bill Cook said, well, you're a lender. Lender really just is ender, the L is silent.
yeah,
Well, if you're in that, I am growing my business, I'm acquiring, then be around people that acquire.
yeah,
Learn great SEO and great technique and, how to better get lists and data mine better. Learn all
yeah,
that. I don't do any of that anymore.
yeah,
So why would you want to hang out with me if you want to acquire?
yeah. I think that's a great point. Um, Reggie, I've really enjoyed our
Oh,
conversation
it's been
today.
fantastic.
And thank you so much for investing your time spending here, sharing with the guest. And I'm excited to get this conversation out to the world.
And thank you for having me. It's always an honor. I hope I didn't waste anybody's time.
No, I think you added to it.
And
You
I
added
just want to
value.
say, we're all created for so much more. Our creator created us to be purposeful and do more. Go make the most of the opportunity.
Yeah.
Don't burn it. Don't
Yeah.
blow it. Go make the most. Get the help you need. Follow good people.
Yeah.
Go make it wonderful.
I love that.
So
Well, look, thank you so much for today.
it's been fun. It
Guys,
has.
I hope you guys enjoyed this just
It's
as
been
much
a
as
lot
I
of
did.
fun.
Well,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
having me. I really appreciate it.
Excellent.